Welcome to the live stream. My name is Wi-Fi Gospel, aka Alexander Medeiros. We're going to be debating some atheists tonight. If you're watching this live, come on in, hit the like button. If you're watching this and it's not live, you can scrub through it, watch whatever you'd like. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you don't have time to watch it now, you can come back and watch it later. Our first guest is A, and he'll be coming up right now. Hey, A.
Yeah, my bad.
You
I
good?
didn't
What's
know
up,
it was
man?
up.
You good? What's up, man?
Okay, what's
Hey,
up?
A. Well, I do.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, my bad. You good? What's up, man? Hold on 1 second. I just want to make sure that echo's not on my end. All right, yeah, it's not on my end, but you got a pretty bad echo.
Yeah, my bad.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to make sure that echo's not on my end. Do you have... Sorry, I had to mute you again. Do you have me playing on a different screen or something?
Are we good now?
I think so. Cool. Yeah.
Okay,
Seems to
yeah,
be
that
good now.
was completely on me. Yeah,
Cool.
my phone was connected up to my car, but it's gonna connect to the speakers automatically. But
No worries.
yeah, it says under atheism, humans have no knowledge or moral responsibility.
Right.
Interesting. I would just like to disagree with that. Because we absolutely have a moral I wouldn't say responsibility, but obligation if we want society to be functioning and be something that, you know, that is conducive to all of our survival.
Why ought we want that?
Because, again, that is the best thing for humanity and the most conducive thing for all of us. So it's not about just what I want anymore. My morality is based off of what is in the best interest of everyone.
Wouldn't that be begging the question?
No, it wouldn't be.
So I said, why ought we do that? And you said, because it's the best thing to do.
Well, I didn't hear that part. It just says under atheism, you have no knowledge of moral responsibility
Yeah, and
or no knowledge over. I didn't hear the second part of that, but I was just going off with the question that's up here.
Right, you had just mentioned moral obligation instead of moral responsibility. That's why I asked you that question. So an obligation is something that you ought to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I asked you why we ought to do it, you said it's the best thing for us.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. It's the best thing for humanity for me to not, you know, murder anybody or grape anybody or, you know, do anything that violates their autonomy.
So there's two assumptions here. One is those things are actually the best thing for humanity, and the other assumption is...
But that's not an assumption. That's not an assumption. Let me finish.
The other assumption would be that we ought to do the best thing. So the first thing you said is not an assumption. Why isn't it an assumption?
Because we can all agree that doing what's best for everybody is usually, no, not even usually, it's what's best for humanity. So when you take a numbers game and you say that, you know what, maybe killing somebody is wrong because it affects not only them, but everybody they've ever known, you know, their girlfriend, their mother, their father, their child, maybe. So it's like, it's not even that me killing somebody is just wrong to me because I decided, but I have come to this conclusion because of all of the other things it may cause or all of the microcosms from me killing somebody.
Fair enough, but the question I'm really getting at is even before that, why, in your worldview, is it wrong to negatively affect a person and their family?
Okay, well, are you asking me, is it objectively wrong?
Well, if it's not objectively wrong, then what you said earlier wouldn't be true, that it's not wrong just because you decided that it's wrong.
But no, I didn't just decide. I looked at all of the data. And then I made a decision that me killing somebody is probably not in everyone's best interest, not just mine. because
Right.
there could absolutely be somebody who pissed me off or, cut me off on the road and I just pull a gun out and shoot them. But that's not in everyone's best interest. So I decided that I would base my morality off of what's good for humanity, not just what's good for me.
You're saying that it's good for humanity, but you're not really providing a case for it. You're just
I
saying that
am though.
it's
I am
not in
though.
the best interest of everybody. But my question is, why should we ought to care about the best interest of everybody? Why is that a good thing?
Because I am a part of this humanity. And if everybody were to just do what's in their best interest, I probably wouldn't exist.
And
So
what
I'm
is
just
wrong
looking
about you
out.
not existing? That's the question.
I want to exist. Do you not?
Well, it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what's right or wrong.
You're right, but I'm saying it's in my best interest to do these things if I want to exist and if I want human beings to continue to exist.
There are plenty of people who don't want to exist.
And there's something wrong with them because
Why?
because if you do not want to exist when our whole reason for just being alive, you're born into this world. So
You're
if you
born with a
don't want to
purpose?
exist, no, you are not born with a purpose. You're just
All right.
born. You're
So
born.
what if that person's purpose is to off themselves?
That sounds like a impossible. I don't understand how that could be a purpose.
Well, under
How
the
could your
atheist
purpose be
worldview,
to die?
under the atheist worldview, what is somebody's purpose? Can they decide it for themselves?
Absolutely.
All right then. If I want to decide
But
that my
if they,
purpose is to off myself, then you can't tell me that that's wrong, right?
I can though,
Based on what?
based on all of the data and everything else that I have accumulated, I know that just killing yourself to want to kill yourself, it's wrong. If you killed yourself because you're getting raped or tortured or you're, in somebody's basement, by all means, probably killing yourself would be in your best interest. But if you just want to kill yourself just to kill yourself, I would never tell anybody
Well,
that that is in
you
their
brought up
best
a good
or
point.
in humanity's best interest.
You brought up a good point. Some people, you said it was okay to off yourself if you're under a certain situation where you're suffering enough. It might be acceptable to off yourself. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it might be
Okay.
acceptable.
So for some people, just living on this earth is suffering enough, and they would like to off themselves.
And that's crazy because I've been through it all. I've been fucking living in Compton and in project homes. I've been in foster care, got back with my grandmother, like freaking what's the name, been mistreated and stuff. But I never thought that not living would be a better alternative.
Right,
So I,
and
I'm
I agree
sorry
with you.
that people. I'm sorry that people that may feel that way, but that doesn't mean they're right.
Right, and just because you feel that way doesn't mean you're right if there are no objective morals.
You're right. And but what I'm saying is, it would be in somebody's. I would tell somebody it would be in their best interest to continue living. I wouldn't tell them
But what
that
if
they
they
have
think
some.
that it wouldn't be in their best interest?
Then I'm
Because you're
sorry.
you're a
I'm
strong
I'm,
person.
I'm
You've
not
been
in
through a lot,
control.
and you're able to find purpose in your suffering. Some people rather not find the purpose in their suffering and rather just go a different route.
And that's understandable. That's their life. I'm never going to tell them that there is some existential being or anything that wants them to continue living so they can continue suffering,
So what
because
would be
that's what
wrong
the
about
Bible
them offing themselves? You said in certain situations it's
would
acceptable,
be.
but that's your standard. What if
Yeah,
their
but
standard is just having to work and pay bills? There are plenty of people who, just because they have to
if
get
you
up and
want to
go to
off
work every
yourself
day,
because you have to work and pay bills, that is absolutely an irrational reason to want to off yourself. We all have to do that. That's part of life. That's part of society. So
right?
if you want to do that for that reason, that is not a justifiable reason. I would never tell you that is a justifiable reason. But if you have a gun to your head and you're saying, "Hey, my bills are too much," and you want to off yourself, who am I to
But when
tell
you
you?
right when you say it's not a justifiable reason, you're saying it based off of your preferences.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying based off the data, based off the what I've accumulated throughout seeing everybody else and every other human being and everybody else in society. If all you're worried about is paying your bills or not being able to pay your bills and also having a job, I wouldn't tell you that's a reason to off yourself. But if you're absolutely getting
For
molested
you,
every day and tortured,
that's your standard of suffering. You have a certain level of suffering that you would be willing to go through before considering doing something like that to yourself. And maybe no amount of suffering would ever make you think of doing that to yourself. But for other people, they have a different standard. And if there is no objective standard to hold people to, then they should do what their preferences align with.
but we do that all the time. Religion
Thank
doesn't
you for the
stop
share,
people
Google.
from
Thanks for the like share,
religion
buddy.
doesn't stop. My bad. Sorry
No, you're
to
good.
cut you off. I know it's your thing. But religion doesn't stop us from murdering murdering the next person. Sorry to say that word.
You're
Or
good.
molesting the next person, or what's
I
the
don't
name,
know if we can
treating
say
the
that
next
word
person
either.
wrong. Well,
Yeah, I don't
shit.
know. I don't
I'm
know.
new to this.
TikTok is sensitive, you know.
I'm new to this. I'm trying to, yes, halfway say words, but yeah, it's like, what's the name? It's not like, you're right. There is no objective morality. Morality is based on what the information we have today, and, you know, the society that we've formed and all that. Just, a few thousand years ago, Avery was okay. It was okay to own
Mm.
somebody.
Do you?
And that it also says in biblical terms it was okay to own somebody. But would you own somebody?
So, there's a couple things that you brought up. So now with Avery, that's I guess a good way to put it. Um, would you say that it's always wrong in every circumstance?
Absolutely. It is absolutely wrong to take somebody's autonomy away.
Okay. So what about prisons?
They did something that we established that are rules or laws, and they went against those things. Therefore, they allowed their freedoms to be taken from them.
So do you see the contradiction though? And maybe you can take it back. That's fine. But earlier you said in absolutely any circumstances it's wrong to own somebody.
But you're not owning somebody when you take them to jail.
Okay. What does it mean to own somebody?
You are in complete control of they have no autonomy. You are in complete control of them. They have no choice to tell you no. They have no laws that prohibit you from doing anything to them.
Wait.
You own them. You can
So
do
look,
to them what you would
American
do to anything else you own.
in American because I don't know if we can say the word Avery is fine. In
Mm.
that institution, even though the laws weren't always followed, and just completely put it out there, it was an awful institution. I completely condemn it, and Christians abolished it. But um, there were laws in place that said you couldn't just off your slave for no reason, right? Or
Correct.
at all.
But it
So
did.
what you
But it,
said is that there are no laws against it. So would that mean that the American Avery situation was not actually Avery?
it absolutely was, because it
Okay.
can in the
But
Bible
there were
it
still laws
says,
against it. There
but
were still laws
laws
governing it.
but laws governing it is not laws against it. When you
Well,
say
okay,
something like,
but
wait,
I was
wait,
just
wait,
going
wait,
off
wait.
your standard.
Okay, can I say something though? When
Absolutely.
you say stuff in the Bible like it is okay to beat another human being within an inch of their life, but if they don't die within 2 days, then you're completely justified. Or take the the Aves from the heathens that surround you, then that is absolutely regulating. It is not telling you to go out and do it, but it is
Right.
absolutely regulating it, and it is
Absolutely.
telling
I didn't
you
say the Bible
that.
condemned slavery or Avery. What I said, I think we can say slavery. That's fine. I've heard people say that.
Okay,
But
okay,
it just sounds funny saying it the other way. But
yeah,
I the Bible doesn't condemn slavery outright. But my argument is that slavery isn't always wrong. And my example is prisons. Some people will say straight out abolish prisons completely. But then there's the problem of what do we do with criminals? But the point I'm trying to make here, one, there's a couple of misconceptions you said. You can't just do whatever you want to your slave biblically. You're good. Your Bluetooth hopped on. But there were regulations in place. In fact, there's verses that say if you break their bones, if you make them blind, you have to let them go free. There's also regulations where if they
But
flee to
saying
their neighbor and
saying
hold on, you get the echo again.
okay, my bad,
I
my bad.
think
But saying, you know, if they break a bone, instead of saying it's not right to beat them, it's two different things.
practically
Like you
speaking,
could
though,
say, but you could
let's in the
say
same
you could
way,
easily beat your child to where you don't break their bone, but you could traumatize them by not breaking their bone and still beating them, right?
right? So a couple more things. I'm just gonna mute you just because the echo is still there. But just a couple more things about the misconceptions. If a slave's escape, they could not be returned. If they fled to their neighbor's house and said that my master is mistreating me, the neighbor had an obligation to protect them until the due process was found out what was going on. And if there was found to be mistreatment, there would be consequences to the owner. But another thing, in prison, you have no autonomy. You're told when to sleep, when to go to the bathroom, when to eat. And then also, if you don't listen, what happens? Violence is applied. Are you saying that it's
Okay.
wrong for a correctional officer to forcefully put somebody in their cell if they refuse to go into their cell?
Um, it is absolutely wrong for a correctional officer to be like, drop your pants and we're going to have sex right now.
Okay.
And
This
that's
is
what can
also wrong
happen to
biblically.
it. But no, that's what
Okay.
can happen to a slave. You can absolutely
Well,
have
and
sex
it's still wrong.
with your slaves. No, it's not though. It's regulated.
Biblically, no, it's not. What verse?
There are I forgot what it is, but it's
There is no
Deuteronomy.
verse in the Bible that tells you that you can grape your slave. Absolutely not.
You can absolutely have sex with your female slave, and if they don't scream or anybody doesn't hear them, you can continue to have sex with them. It
If
is
you want
not
to bring up
considered
that
rape,
verse, we could discuss it, but you're not speaking consistent with the Bible.
but it's not considered rape when you say if no one hears them, then it's
No, the
okay.
verses you're speaking of is probably Numbers 31. And the reason that they're using that language is they're differentiating between fornication and grape. Fornication had
Okay.
different consequences than grape. In that same verse of Numbers 31 in those passages, when the man graped the woman, it said that the man should be put to death.
Right, but if it's not considered grape, then she should be put to death, right?
No, if it's fornication, then they would have to get married. If it was
And that sounds
fornication,
crazy to me.
if it
And
was
that sounds crazy.
adultery, hold on. If it was adultery, then both would be put to death. Are you there? I can't hear you. PI forever, because it is not always wrong to own somebody, i.e. prisons. What does it mean to own somebody? If you're saying that the state does not own its prisoners, I'd like you to make that case. All right, we lost A. If you want to come back up, A, you're more than welcome to. We've got 5 people here, 90 likes. I appreciate the likes. If you could keep it going so we get some more people in here, I would appreciate that. On the YouTube side, how are you guys doing? RDJJ, what's up? Joel, I don't know if you're still here. How you doing, brother? And my moral responsibility argument has to do with determinism. Oh, excuse me. But he brought up a different thing, and instead of derailing it, I just went that route. But hey, I hope you're listening. You at least have something to think about. If anybody wants to come up and talk about these topics, we definitely can. If you want to come up and make the case that states don't own prisoners, I'd like to talk about that as well. Oh, I got to put collab cam on so that people can join from YouTube. If you were trying to join from the link, now you can. Where are my chats? So you would let someone own you as property during those times. The philosophy of ownership is actually extremely interesting. But just because you own something does not mean you can do whatever you please to it. Animals are a great example. Anarchy literally only means no rulers and no slaves. That's interesting. Would you like to flesh that out? That's an interesting thought. Thank you guys for coming by. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you for the likes. We're up to 500 on TikTok. I appreciate that. Might as well tell us while waiting. Tell us what, RDJJ. I'm trying to pull up. I had. Sign into chat. Open in web browser. And it didn't pop up. Alright, this is what we'll do. Chrome. Something about an argument. Oh, so I'm working on an argument for atheism, and I'm super clear on determinism. What I'm not as confident in is that atheism entails determinism, although a lot of atheists are determinists. But if determinism is true, then our actions, our behaviors, and our thoughts are all determined by previous states of the universe. Mark Passios' lecture on natural law. I'll write that down. Thank you, Stupendous. If determinism is true, then all of our actions, thoughts, and behaviors are determined by previous states of the universe. You could think of like if I take a rock and I throw it down a hill, if I knew all of the variables and I had a calculator that could calculate all of the variables, then we would be able to tell exactly where the rock was going to be able to land. And if it's the same thing with our brains, if they're made up of the same elementary particles as that rock, and they're governed by the same laws of motion as that rock, if we had a way to determine all of the variables of our lives, and we had a divine calculator per se that made no errors, if determinism is true, we would be able to tell exactly what you would eat for breakfast tomorrow, exactly what you would say to your wife tonight, all of these things. If that's the case, we would not be responsible for the things we do. And that's where my argument against moral responsibility comes from. War Within, what's up, man? How you doing? Jesus Christ is Lord, how are you? Jumpin' Jacks, JCR Nara. Cool, we have another guest. Jumpin' Jacks, what's up, man? How are you?
Divine, what about yourself?
Doing well, doing well. Are you an atheist or a Christian?
No, I'm not atheist, but I'm also not religious. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Are you
Um,
like a
so
deist?
what's a deist? I believe in God. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
rock with God. Shouts out to
Okay.
God. Love you, bro. Anyway,
Okay.
it
That's what
says under
deism is.
atheism. Oh, okay, facts. It says under atheism, humans have no knowledge or moral responsibility. I disagree. Just
Okay.
because outside of religion, right? And actually, if you look at early religion, a lot of early religion was essentially societal laws. So modern day atheists or people who don't subscribe to ancient laws or religion, their morality or moral responsibility derives from what their governing authorities tell them to. For example, no murder or uh, no grape, right? Whatever their current modern day societies have bestowed upon them or have raised them. That's where their morality comes from. And
Well, a lot of people would disagree with that who are atheists. For example, a lot of atheists live in states where uh shishmortion, if you get my drift, is
yep.
is illegal now,
Hmm.
and they would say that that does not represent their morality.
Well, no, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of laws that don't represent people's morality the same way that are you. I'm assuming you're a Christian.
Yes.
So the same way that it's either Corinthians or Timothy, the Bible probably has some laws from the time period that it was written that don't necessarily align with your morality, such as women should not hold positions of authority, or it's shameful for women to speak in churches. That's from the New Testament, by the way.
Right. There's certain context there, but
No, that's not that. That's not implied context. That's how it's explicitly stated.
yeah, theologically I'm not super sharp on that end. But I I would sorry, my wife's saying something. You all right?
Right. See,
Yeah, I should tell her to shut up, right? No, I'm just kidding.
according to
We're not in church.
Corinthians and Timothy,
We're not in church.
not facts for sure. That
No,
is true.
but
Timothy explicitly states the church. That is
but
true.
my morality comes from the Bible.
Comes from where? I missed the last part.
From the
Apologize.
Bible, from divine revelation.
Yeah, my morality comes from me and what God will allow me to get away with. But even sometimes I push on God a little bit to be like, "Hey, bro, let me get away with this too." And it usually works in my favor, benefit, just because my intentions are never like impure, and God knows that I'm pretty cheeky anyway, and I'm always pushing that boundary. So I mean, but that's pops. Anyway, as far as religion goes, like I would never get my morality from anything that men can meddle with. And religion has been meddled with by men many times. You can't meddle with God, right? So because of
Right.
that,
So are you saying that you get direct revelation from God about what is right and what is wrong?
uh, I mean, I wouldn't use the word revelation because that takes it to a different space. But yeah, I guess you could say that. I would say that, like, yeah, like I would, yeah, I talk to God all the. I mean,
Okay.
God is raising me, so it's not like I don't really have. I do have a
And
choice,
that's
and
all
like,
that revelation means is something that God has
yeah.
revealed to you.
Yeah, nah, for sure. And I mean, I do have a choice, but I have a lot of freedom, right? Like God doesn't really restrict us. Like I don't know how it is for you guys, but like for us, like God's not really a restrictive parent, to be honest. Humans, on the other hand, are extremely restrictive.
So I have a
Uh,
question for you.
yeah,
Let's say I'm sure you're not the only one who believes the way you do, right? You probably even know some people who believe the way that you do. What's up, Spicy?
my brothers, yeah,
All right.
sisters, probably.
So if you believe that God is telling you that one thing is okay, and then somebody else who has similar beliefs about God as you says that God told them that that thing is actually not okay, how do we know who is right and who is wrong?
Well, realistically, I'm not really too concerned about others. I could tell you the truth. It's probably not going to sit well with you because it doesn't typically sit well with people who have been educated on what gods are based off of a human perspective. Um, but again, like time tells everything, right? Time tells everything, and the most important thing is focusing on your relation with God, right? Because, for example, just because something's okay for me to do with like if God were to bless me, doesn't mean it's okay for you to do because my understanding or my relation may be different, right? Like the same way that Donald Trump can get away with things that you may not be able to. So,
Getting away with something doesn't change the fact that it's right or wrong, right?
well, no. So let me rephrase that then. Just because something is okay for me to do doesn't necessarily mean that it's okay for you to do, right? Like you have to be able to. You have to your line of thought and your understanding has to be in a place to where God's like, oh yeah, that's cool, right? But
All right,
everybody's
so
not.
let me give you an
Everybody's not.
example.
Yeah.
Let's say that you believe God has told you that schmurder is wrong, that you shouldn't be schmurdering anybody. But then I come around and I say, well, God actually told me that I can schmurder a certain type of people because those people are inherently bad. Well, how would we know who is right and who is wrong?
I mean, again, like if God said you can do that, I'll mind my business. What God tells you doesn't have anything to do with me. If God tells you to go poop or scoop, God didn't tell me to poop or scoop. God told you to poop or scoop. So that's like if you have one parent and a parent says, "Hey, yo, you can go to the movies." That doesn't mean that everyone in the household got the blessing, right? It can't like it. So you gotta. A lot of people think that, well, if God said you can do it, then we all can. That's not how it works. It's still
Right, but
on an individual
if
basis.
God contradicts himself,
God's not That's not a contradiction.
yeah.
No, so here, I'll explain it like this one more time. Okay, so God is okay. I'll explain it like this. God is my parent, right? God tells me, "Yo, I am. You can go to the movies." God said I could go to the movies. God didn't say you could go to the movies. So just because God gave me permission to do something doesn't mean everybody else automatically gets permission to do that. So if you're focused on what I've gotten permission to do, then that's your fault because you have to focus on what God is telling you or God is allowing you to do. So if God says you can murder a million people, God didn't say I could murder a million people. So if I went and murdered a million people and God's like, yo, I didn't say you could do that, but so and so did it. But yeah, I said so and so could do that, not you. That's a part of the problem is like you guys think that
Okay.
God is a shared experience.
So if the president right now made a law saying that a certain type of race of people could murder another certain type of race of people, and the people who are being murdered are not allowed to defend themselves in any way, wouldn't that be wrong to do? Isn't that is that fair?
Well, the president's not God though. So and like I
God's
don't
also
listen to
not a
the
parent. We just use examples.
God is a parent actually. Just
I
not to
mean,
you.
not in
Not to
there.
you.
What does that mean?
Well, like, because a lot of people say we're all creations of God, and that's not true. Like, some
Okay, if
people are
God didn't
creations.
create me, where did I come
Well,
from?
no, no, hold on. Some people are creations of a creation, right? God created creation and creations that could create. So creation, like,
So did God create everything?
God laid the foundation and then gave other things the ability to be able to create. For example, humans created cell phones,
No, we
right? Now
didn't.
we can say God created cell phones. We can
We
say
didn't. We
God
didn't
created
create cell phones. We
what
put
so
together
what it
material that God had given us.
right.
So we
So
discovered a combination of materials that gave us
created.
intelligence.
I don't want to do
That's
the
not creation.
semantics.
I mean,
Humans
words matter.
created cell phone. Yeah, but you're doing a semantic thing, like because that's what I
Okay.
just said. God laid the foundation. That's what I meant, right? So, and God
Did God
and
indirectly
creation.
create everything?
I mean, you can say that for sure
Okay.
because it all stems from God. If God didn't lay the foundation, there's nothing to build upon. But like God didn't physically put the tree together unless you want to take it real or not the tree, but physically put a house together unless you want to say, well, God created so and so, then that's a different discussion. But yeah, creations have the ability to create, right? And a creation of a creation isn't necessarily a creation of God. The materials came from God, yeah. But the creation of the creation is not a creation of God, it's a creation of a creation. Meaning that it's not
Mm,
perfect because only God, the only creations that are perfect are God's creations, like direct creations, like myself.
okay. I do appreciate you coming up. I think I have another atheist in the chat box, in the guest box. I am
All right,
focused
well,
on
I'm not an
atheists,
atheist.
but
Yeah. All right, be easy.
all right, sounds good, man. Bye.
Peace.
Hello?
Anime debater, what's up? I feel like I've seen your name somewhere before. Have we talked before?
I don't think so.
Okay. Maybe I saw you in a live somewhere.
Maybe.
How are you? Are you an atheist?
Yeah.
Nice. All right,
Um,
somebody joined. Lab cam
what's up?
John, I'll bring you up next over on YouTube. Sorry, so do you disagree with the prompt?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think you can have knowledge under atheism?
Yeah.
Okay, how so?
Um, so, and under, I guess, the broad scope of epistemology, there's a lot of different interpretations of what knowledge is.
Okay.
I think that I think that knowledge is just some fundamental mental state. And I think that under atheism, mental states are possible. And I think this fundamental mental state is also possible.
Okay. Is there a mental state that's that's a belief in not knowledge?
A belief in not knowledge.
Yeah.
Not knowledge doesn't sound like a coherent statement. I don't know what that means.
Well, so you can believe things and not know them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they would also be mental states, beliefs.
Beliefs are mental states, yeah.
Okay. And how do we differentiate between a belief and knowledge?
I don't think you can. I think that epistemologists have been trying to do that since Gettier, but I don't think that there's been any successful case of it.
Okay. If that's true, do you see how when I say that everything I believe I know would be possible?
Everything, yeah, that's possible, yeah.
Okay. So if I believe that Christianity is true, does that mean I know that Christianity is true?
No.
Okay.
It's
Why not?
possible that everything that you believe is true, but in this case, I don't
Well,
think it is true.
if there's no way to differentiate between belief and knowledge, either we don't have knowledge or we don't have beliefs.
Well, that's not true. I don't know what you mean by that.
Well,
There's no way to differentiate between the two. I think we can ascribe different properties to belief specifically, and we can't ascribe
okay.
those to knowledge.
That's what I
Like
asked
I
for
think that we
earlier.
can understand a belief as some dispositional attitude towards the acceptance of a proposition's truth. I don't think that's what knowledge is. I don't think it's the acceptance of something's truth. I think knowledge is a primitive, but I don't think that description fits what knowledge is.
Okay, so what description does fit with knowledge is?
I I think knowledge is a primitive. I mean, I think we can understand it like in, I don't know, JTB. Even that fails sometimes though, but that's why I don't accept JTB.
Okay. I'm a little confused here. Do you think knowledge is possible or not?
Yeah, I think knowledge is possible.
Okay. So do you know anything?
I'm not sure.
So knowledge is possible, but you don't know if you can know anything.
Yes, right.
Okay. Do you know that?
No,
Okay.
I can just describe different probabilistic certainties to something. Not probabilistic certainties, sorry. Probabilistic natures of something. So I can
Do
ascribe
you
the
see the
the
infinite regress though?
the infinite. Well, I am an infinitist.
So you think infinite regresses are okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I say that God exists, and I know that via divine revelation, and you ask me how I know the divine revelation, and I say via divine revelation, and I go in an infinite regress, would that be acceptable?
No, I'm an infinitist, not a coherentist.
Okay. Could you define those terms for me? I'm not completely familiar with them.
Yeah, sure. So, in epistemology, there's something called the Munchausen trilemma, where it says that justification can either go on for a finite link, an infinite link, or a circular link. The infinitist position says that justification goes on infinitely and it's non-circular. The coherentist position says that at some point the chain starts looping around. So A justifies B, B justifies C, and C justifies A. That's like a circle. And then the foundationalist position says that there's some foundational belief. So it's a finite. The link of justification is a finite chain. I'm an
Okay.
infinitist.
So could you explain to me how what I said earlier doesn't apply there?
Which that you believe Christianity is true.
Right, and this isn't my position. I was just trying to uh, see if this would be allowed within your position as an infinitist. If I were to say, I believe God exists because he told me, and then you asked me for the justification, and I just said, well, he told me, and then you asked me for the justification of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No. So um, infinitists will always disagree with this, but it's depending on the specific type of infinitist. I think that's not true because that's well, one that does sound circular, but even if I did disagree with that, I think that to have something that justifies another thing, it has to have a higher likelihood of that thing being true.
But
So
so,
let me try to illustrate this with like an example, right? Like if I try to justify the proposition P with proposition Q, Q is only going to be able to justify P if Q has a higher likelihood of being true.
okay, but
And
so, because in in what I just thought was that I was giving an example equal to your example, and then you said my example doesn't apply to the infinitist or isn't acceptable to the infinitist. But it seems like you're talking about something completely different than what I asked you earlier, and maybe I'm just getting it wrong. But when I asked you earlier, you said I asked you if you can know anything. You said I'm not sure. So then I said, do you know that you're not sure that you can know anything? And you said no. And then I said, do you see how that gets you into an infinite regress? And you said yes, but it doesn't matter because I'm an infinitist. But then you said that my example about knowing that God exists because he told me, because he told me, because he told me, because he told me, isn't the same, but it seems exactly the same to me.
I don't. If you can draw like the chain for me, that'd be
Well,
fine.
I'm not sure I can, but what I'm saying is, how is it different? It seems exactly the same to me. You said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, and I said, God told me, God told me, God told me, God told me.
Um, so I don't know. There isn't is not a justification for something. I don't know is a statement about my mental state. You're saying God told me. That's supposed to lend credence for the towards the proposition that God is real.
Okay, but you saying I don't know that I know anything also doesn't tell me anything. That's the chain I'm trying to, because the other position is not my position, right? I was
Well,
trying to mirror your position to show you that it's absurd, and not in a
you
rude
understand
way,
that I'm
just
not
like
trying to
pessimistically.
justify anything, right? I'm not trying to justify anything by saying I don't know something.
Well, you're trying to justify the proposition that you don't know anything.
No, if I was
Yeah.
trying to justify that I don't know anything by saying I don't know, that's just asserting the thing that I need to justify.
So can you justify the proposition that you don't know anything?
I don't, well, I'm not even sure. I'm agnostic on all of that. That's what I mean by I don't know.
Okay. I mean, I
I
don't
can
I
tell
don't
you
think
that
you live your
generally
life like that.
I can tell you that generally I think I have an introspection into my own mental state, and right now I don't have a belief on the case that I know that I have knowledge or something like that.
Okay. I want to bring up, just because you're a respectful guy and you sounds pretty smart. I have. That's why that's not working. All right, I can bring it up on my phone. So I have. I had to restart my computer because I tried to get in on the Windows Insider program to get. There's a new feature on Windows 11 where you can have multiple programs access one camera, which is awesome for streaming. But it completely destroyed my computer and I had to reset it, and now my Chrome won't work.
Mm.
But I can bring it up on
Oh,
my
okay.
phone. So I have a syllogism, dun, 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 dun. And it's not complete, so don't laugh at me, chat. I'm working on it for a debate. Okay. So I believe that knowledge has to be indefeasible. Do you know what I mean by indefeasible?
I'm assuming you mean the same thing by infallible. Like you
Right.
only have
So
reasons for it, but no reasons against it. Is that what you mean?
So when I say indefeasible, and the definition of indefeasible is not able to be lost, annulled, or overturned. So especially the overturned part. So you know how like, if we say we know something based on the evidence that we have today, but then new evidence emerges tomorrow to show that what we believed or what we said we knew was actually not true, then it wasn't actually knowledge. That's what I mean by
Okay.
indefeasibility.
Okay. And you think knowledge is indefeasible?
Yes, and here's kind of the argument.
Okay.
If knowledge is not indefeasible, then it is necessarily fallible. If knowledge is fallible, then it relies on some level of credence below 100%. But picking a credence threshold below 100% is arbitrary. There is no principled reason to choose, say, 51, 70, 90, or 99%. If the threshold is arbitrary, anything above that line can be called knowledge, erasing any meaningful distinction from mere belief. Therefore, the threshold between mere belief and knowledge cannot be arbitrary. Therefore, knowledge must be indefeasible. And I can read it. I
Okay.
know that was a lot.
So yeah, let me just try to get clear. So if it is the case that knowledge is fallible,
Mm-hmm.
then it would also be the case that the way that we measure knowledge is through some percentage or some like probabilistic way.
Right.
And the way that we measure the threshold of knowledge from then would be arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem because what was it? Why was it a problem?
Yeah, so if it's arbitrary, then there's no reason to pick any certain one. That's what arbitrary means, right? And
Sure.
then I can just pick 0.01% as my credence level, and everything I believe is knowledge.
Okay. So, and then the conclusion there was then it must be indefeasible. So,
Right, because that's just. I guess maybe there might be work there to for the conclusion because I guess I would have to work on why having every belief as knowledge is a problem. But I think like that would be like an obvious problem, right?
sorry, repeat the question.
So I guess I might have some work to do to make the conclusion that having that there being no distinction between mere belief and knowledge is a problem. But I guess I didn't do it because it seemed to be an obvious problem to me.
Hmm.
Is
Okay.
that yeah? Would you agree like that it's an obvious problem?
For if the like the credence level is arbitrary, then you could just believe you would like know something if you had like 0.10 uh or something like some entity that would raise the probability of something being true by 0.01%.
Right,
And
which
then
is
I would
pretty
know
much
it.
every belief.
You think that every belief is justified by something by by some element that can only probabilify it by 0.01%?
So like if it were the case that that's true, that you would only need 0.01%, pretty much every
Hmm.
belief we have has at least that percentage of being true.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying that is how we form beliefs.
No, so
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I was
so
go ahead.
this seems to be rejecting like I would have a problem with the idea that if it was infallible, or sorry, if it was fallible, then it would be arbitrary. I don't know why I would accept that.
Okay. This comes from a paper by an epistemologist named Lawrence Bonjour,
Oh,
and it's called "The Myth of Knowledge." If anybody wants to read it, these guys are good at hiding their stuff behind paywalls. I don't think many people read these things, but if you do read it, you got to pay. But you can get it on any philosophy paper website. Um, and he brought it up like there's like what is the reason to pick any level of credence?
okay. It so the justification for the conditional is a question.
Um, yeah, I get what you're saying there. I guess I have to work on the way I word this. Um, because you can change any question into a statement. It's pretty easy, but um,
Well, I mean, I guess
picking
I
a
could still.
credence threshold below 100% is arbitrary. You're asking. I have to justify that. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I mean, if if you want to talk about that, I can make chair tomorrow and we could talk about
Yeah,
some views that
and
would
that's a
reject that.
good criticism for me to work on the syllogism. I'm gonna write that down.
Okay.
But yeah, let's talk about it if you don't mind.
Sure. So I guess there's a few views that would sort of give an example for this, but probably the most plausible would be Bayesianism, Bayesian epistemology. So under Bayesianism, we would measure the different credences by competing hypotheses. And these competing hypotheses would just, one to understand if two mutually exclusive hypotheses have one advantage over the other, we would just understand it as 50% against 50%, and then any probability raiser or probability, I guess, lower, even though it's not a word, could just increase the gap between the two 50% of the competing hypotheses.
Okay, so that would give us reason to believe one hypothesis over the other, right?
Yeah,
Okay, but
under
what?
Bayesianism.
But how would that apply to the threshold of credence that turns a belief into knowledge?
So anything greater or anything less than 50% would then give justification. So we're not actually talking about knowledge right now, we're talking about justification, because I think that's what you meant by the probability raisers, because that tends to not really that tends to be like a talk about justification. So if that's the case, then we can measure those sorts of things like under the hypothesis of general relativity, we would expect to see several things. We do see those things, so it raises the credence of that hypothesis of general relativity being true by some margin, right? And that would increase the probability of general relativity being true. and we could do it that way. We could measure
Okay.
the threshold that way.
But then, so all right, and maybe I'm just not making the bridge. Um, when you're talking about general relativity and the hypotheses that make it more true, um, how would that like how I understand like the probability of it being true could be raised, but at what
Mhm.
point would we consider it knowledge? And again, maybe I'm just not getting it.
So, well, I don't really know. I think this is a fundamental disagreement on what knowledge is, to be honest. I don't know if you're understanding knowledge differently than me. But if all you mean by knowledge is justified true belief, and we understand justification in the Bayesian way, where it would just be something along the lines of if some theory, let that theory be T, best explains the data whilst positing, the least amount of entities, then we can just infer that that theory is true or justified at least. This gives us reason to believe it. And again, we think about that in the probabilistic sense. And then you understand knowledge to be something like justified true belief, even though I don't agree with that. Um, then we could form a belief based off of those reasons that Bayesianism gives us. And if it happens to be true, then we would know. We would know that way.
Okay, but even under Bayesianism, if I'm saying that right, I probably butchered that. Uh, it would still there would be a certain level of credence to that belief. And in saying, well, it just needs to be over 50%, how is that not arbitrary?
So this isn't, well, this follows from probability theory. So these are called uh, Kolmogorov's something along those lines axioms of probability theory.
Okay.
And one of these axioms is that case, right? And so let's say I couldn't make the case for why it wasn't arbitrary, right? I think that we can both agree that whenever we're trying to pick out axioms, we see what is plausible and we see which axioms are plausible based off of our intuitions, right? And if you're saying that it's arbitrary given our intuitions are arbitrary, then we could talk about that. But I think intuitions actually do give us justification for, what to believe.
Well, speaking of axioms, are axioms arbitrary?
Axiom, what did you define as
Are
arbitrary again?
um I didn't
No
define
reasons to
arbitrary,
believe
but
it.
let's get a definition for it. Yeah, like no justification for it.
No, I think so. I mean, I guess so. By themselves, they're not a justificatory thing. Is that a word? I don't even know. But by themselves, they're not trying to justify anything. But I think we can pick these axioms out, right? Given our intuitions, and I think intuitions gives us justification.
See, this is where, and I'm not trying to play word games. This is where it gets confusing to me because I thought, like you said, by definition, I don't know if you said this. I thought maybe you may have inferred this that axioms are not justified. But then if you're saying intuition, we pick axioms by intuition, and intuition just is justificatory. That seems contradictory to me.
So I don't know what it means to ask if an axiom is justified. I don't, that sound to me that sounds like saying, is this rock justified? Is it justified at what? I don't, that sounds like just a definite description. I don't know what that means. But if you're asking me, can we be justified in choosing what axioms we accept? Then yeah, I think we can.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can give you a sort of thought experiment because I'm not even sure that you disagree with that if you want.
Yeah, sure. And then because I'm just I'm not pushing back on you because I'm not completely familiar with Bayesian probability but I think I have I think it's still my point about arbitrariness stands. But like I said, I'm not pushing hard against you because I have to look more into that. But
Sure.
let's do
So
that
I
thought
think
experiment.
Yeah, so I think that if intuitions give us justification for accepting these axioms, and these axioms would lead to this threshold, then we have reasons to believe this threshold, and that's not arbitrary. And I think intuitions give us justification. I think that the only thing that we sort of can have different certainties about is our own mental states. I think a mental state is an introspective sort of thing. Um, and our intuitions seem to obviously give us justification, at least prima facie. So a thought experiment would be something like whenever I'm choosing if, the earth is flat or the earth is round, I can either trust my intuition that the earth is round, or I can flip a coin, and if it lands on heads, then I believe it's round, and if it lands on tails, then I believe it's flat. It seems like I would favor my intuition over the thing that doesn't give me justification.
Okay. Two things. One, considering the majority of the world is theistic, wouldn't that prove theism by intuition?
I think that intuitions give people, like individually, prima facie justification. I think if you have an intuition that there's a God, that gives you reasons to believe that there's a God.
Reasons enough to know that there is a God?
No, reasons enough to believe.
Okay, but we remember, like, because we were trying to figure out what level of credence. So, would you say that intuition could only give you reasons to believe a certain level of credence is acceptable for knowledge,
Do I think intuitions could only give me reasons to believe a certain level of credence is
and not
acceptable for
know it?
knowledge?
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't know. I guess I need to make this clear.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about the probability, when we're talking about what is the arbitrary line, or what is the line, the threshold of what counts towards something, I'm not talking about knowledge at all. I'm talking about justification. What counts towards being justified in something or having a reason to believe something, not knowledge.
Okay. So it seems I want to talk to you about one more thing too, because I'm enjoying our conversation. But it seems to
Sure.
connect all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, where we couldn't really establish a difference between belief and knowledge.
Um, so I'm not sure that I agree.
Okay.
We can understand beliefs as some dispositional attitude towards the acceptance of a proposition. I understand knowledge as a primitive. I think it's an irreducible thing. I don't think we can understand knowledge in terms of other things.
Okay. I and then so if I were to, but like, and I'm not like trying to go in circles or get gotchas or anything. I'm just asking because, like I
Sure,
said, I'm enjoying our conversation. Um,
sure.
it seems to be weird that knowledge can be this thing, but we can't know it.
So, in linguistic philosophy, there's this idea called semantic primitives, and these are things that we can't reduce into other words without like going circular or something like that. These are the sorts of things that we can only sort of jump around the concept of. So some people actually disagree with semantic primitives. I think they're kind of silly. I think that at least in academic literature, we tend to accept that there are a few primitives. So I think generally, and I'm talking about the philosophy population, by the way. Generally, I think that um, uh, philosophers take existence as a primitive. I think generally philosophers take consciousness as a primitive. I think
Is
generally,
this is primitive the same as prima facie, or is it different?
no, 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 sorry, sorry. Prima facie just means that you have gilded justification for something. Like at first glance, this thing, like you have reasons to believe this thing. Primitive means it's not something that's reducible. So
Okay.
a primitive concept is a concept that's not reducible to other concepts. You can't understand the word existence by other things without just going circular. So like, what is existence? Well, something that's actually there. Well, what is actually there? I don't know. Something that's in reality. What is reality? So, like all the things that exist. Um, so it just goes in this big circle. These sorts of things just try to jump around the concept of existence. The same thing with consciousness, the same thing with temporal notions. I don't think that we can understand past. I don't think that we can understand uh, present or future without ending up going circular. And I think that's the same for knowledge. I don't think that we can try to understand knowledge with certain things like JTB, but JTB fails to Gettier cases. We can understand it as the causal theory, but causal theories fail to the fake barn county thought experiment, and on and on. Like reliabilism fails. Any like virtue epistemology, I think, fails,
Okay.
which is why
I
I think knowledge is a primitive.
So I would highly encourage you to read that paper. I don't even mind. I don't know if I can say this publicly, but giving you my login so you can read it for free. Um, but
Probably don't say that right now
yeah.
on live.
um, Just kidding. I
Don't worry, I already have
if I bought
I have
it
a
for
filmmaker's
if I
credit.
paid an extra $40 or $30, I could have got the PDF version, which I think you can share. I don't know. It's like handing somebody a book, right? I bought the book. I can let you borrow it. I don't know. um, but the last thing I want to
Don't
talk
worry,
about.
I have my own
Okay.
Bill People's profile. I get that stuff for free.
Really? Like legally? You like a subscription?
Yeah, I study philosophy at university.
Oh, so you have access that way. Gotcha. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, reliability does reliabilism does good enough. Heard spicy. We'll talk about that. So oh, there was two things I wanted to say. I forgot one of them, but there's another guest I want to bring up, but there's one more. Oh, so yeah, the other thing I forgot in
Hmm.
that paper, Lawrence Bonjour makes the argument that JTB under infallibilism doesn't fall victim to the Gettier cases, and that the Gettier cases only pose a problem for fallibilists, which was interesting. But I can't repeat the argument, so that's why I suggest you to read it. Um,
Okay.
as far as the lottery paradox, are you familiar with that? And I think there's a
Um,
bunch of different ones. So,
yeah, I think there's like 80. Which one
but
are you referring to?
under fallibilism, if even if the credence level was 99%, so if justified true belief holds and you only need 99% justification to know something, wouldn't it follow that uh you could buy a lottery ticket, like a Powerball ticket, and know that you're going to lose?
And know that I can lose
Know that you're going to lose.
if I have 99% like reason or 99% credence to believe that I'm going to win or lose.
Lose. Like so like,
Okay.
Powerball there's only generally one, two or three winners and there's, maybe a million tickets sold.
No, I think that generally um it's going to be whatever is the case.
Right, but
So I
but we
think
don't have access to that whatever is the case. Cuz it would be
so
before the draw.
okay, before the draw, do I think that I can know something is the case? Under JTB, you said?
Yeah, if justification, the level of justification only needs to be 99%.
Well, it seems like if you're saying if knowledge is understood as JTB and we have 99% credence to believe something is true, it's fulfilled the belief that I'm not going to win. It's fulfilled the justification that I'm not going to win. But no, if we don't know the truth, then it doesn't fulfill the necessary and sufficient conditions of knowledge.
Right, but isn't that the problem with fallibilism is like the reason you know something is true is because your level of credence. Like the truth aspect, sure, it could exist somewhere ontologically, but the only way we know exactly what is the case, because I think the whole point of fallibilism is to avoid the whole brain in a vat thing, right? Like if we say, I can generally trust uh, my senses, but yeah, if I were a brain in a vat, sure, I can't trust my senses. That would be the same level of credence, like to know my hands exist. Like I know my hands exist because I have everything else tells me except this weird philosophical thing about being a brain in a vat. That's the 0.01% that we have to account for. But in the lottery paradox that I gave, it seems like it's the same situation. Sure, I could win, but that's 0.01% highly unlikely. Just like it's highly unlikely that I'm a brain in a vat. Does that make sense?
Um, I understand. I mean, yes, it makes sense, but I don't agree with it.
Okay.
So I think that the the point of the hypothetical doesn't really land, at least not with me, because it sounds like what it's saying is we have, is it true that I know something if I'm justified in believing it? And if we're running under JTB, justified belief doesn't constitute justified true belief, which is what knowledge is. And if I have 99% credence to believe something and I believe it, I'm justified in believing something. I don't know that thing. under JTB, and that's not
Well, under
that's like the
fallibilism, it would
normal
be.
case.
Like,
Under
even
fallible,
take the lottery out of it,
you think
right?
that's true?
Because, well, like, take the lottery out of it because I understand, like, the hang up on the lottery because it's a future thing that we all generally believe there's a chance of us winning. Like, that seems obvious. So I get that. But, like, let's take the fact that I have hands, right? Um,
Sure.
the way we would justify that is through sense data, right?
Yeah.
All right. But I don't have 100% certainty that my sense data is supplying me with true information about the world around me and my own body, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, is it just a justified belief or is it knowledge under fallibilism that I have hands?
It should just be a justified belief, unless you're using fallibilism in a way that I've never heard.
I Let me just look up is there a certain website you use for definitions when talking about philosophy that you like Standard Encyclopedia or something, philosophy, Stanford? Cuz this is
For
just a regular.
definitions,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is from Oxford Languages Dictionary. Fallibilism is the principle that propositions concerning empirical knowledge can be accepted even though they cannot be proved with certainty. So I can know something without being 100% certain of it, right?
well, I don't think that's what that's saying. It's saying that you can accept it, even if you don't, if you're even if you're not certain of it. And acceptance is belief.
Well,
It
it's
doesn't fulfill the
accepting
truth criteria,
empirical knowledge.
right? It's accept it's accepting you believe that empirical knowledge portrays the world properly.
So if, and I don't think you're a fallibilist, right? Or
Under
am
that
I?
definition, I am,
So
and
wouldn't
that's how
that
I
kind
understand
of
fallibilism.
wouldn't that kind of fit under atheism? Humans have no knowledge. Even if we replace atheism with fallibilism, because maybe you can't make the argument that atheism entails fallibilism. But wouldn't that kind of fit the prompt?
Um, what I'm still a little confused. You understand that what you just read there of what fallibilism is didn't make any claims about you knowing something, just that you accepted something.
Right. So if, like, from what I've read, and again, maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a philosophy major or anything. I'm just a guy on the internet. But
Mhm.
from what I've read and people I've interacted with, actually, Spicy's in the chat now. I learned about fallibilism from Spicy. Is that fallibilism gives us, like, the whole idea of fallibilism and the reason most epistemologists are fallibilists is because they don't believe we can know anything infallibly, being fallible creatures, but they want to hold on to this notion of knowledge, especially everyday knowledge, such as the fact that I know I have hands. Am I wrong in that?
Sure. Um, your conclusion was right. Yes, that's what the fallibus would say. But it
Okay.
sounds like you're equivocating on terms between knowledge and the fallibus position of what the fallibus position states, specifically acceptance. I if the fallibus would say, um, if I have like 80% credence towards believing that my friend is drunk or something, right? Um, and I believe that my friend is drunk. I'm justified in believing that. That's what the Phelps would say. Not that it is true if that my friend is drunk or something. It doesn't fulfill the criteria for knowledge. It's speaking solely on belief and justification. So justify belief, not justify true belief, which is what knowledge
Okay.
is under your understanding.
Yeah, and last thing, because I want to bring John up because he's been waiting very patiently.
Sorry, Dylan.
No worry, we've had a really good conversation. So it's confusing to me because back to our example about knowing that we have hands. So you would say you can't know that you have hands?
I cannot. Well, I'm not really sure what you mean. So I don't make any modal claims. I don't like I think it's possible that well, I guess I didn't make modal claims. I don't make any strict modal claims about impossibility or necessity of knowledge. I don't think that it's necessary that we have knowledge. I don't think it's a possible to have knowledge or something like that. I think it's possible that I have a lot of false beliefs about something like that. Like any case, like, the Moore's, here's one hand thing. I think that we can have, 99% reasons to believe my somosensory information in, where my hands are, my sight, my vision of seeing my hands. But I think that it's still possible my belief is false. And then under JTB, I wouldn't know that my hand is full, like my hands aren't there, um, or my hands are there. I would just have a false belief. But if it was true, then I would know, right? It would. So it's possible that I know, and it's likely that I know, but it's not true. We don't know for certain that it's true that I know.
So the truth aspect has to be 100% certain, but we wouldn't have
Under
access
JTB,
to that certainty.
so under JTB, well, yes, you're right, but just to be clear, you wouldn't understand it like that. You wouldn't say it's certain that something is true if nobody's observing it, because certainty is an observant thing. That's something that you need to mind for. But yes, I think you understand.
Would indefeasibility be the same thing, like certainty?
Would indefeasibility be certainty? Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
like those are kind of interchangeable terms.
Yeah,
Okay. So the part I get stuck on then here, it just needs to be true, but that's not what certain means. Okay, Spicy, you might have a different idea than the guest then. But so so here's where we wouldn't know that we know. Is that a correct statement?
we wouldn't know that we know. If Well, I don't even know. Like, I can't make. I think that we know.
Okay.
I think that we have a lot of reasons to believe that we have knowledge, and I think that. Well, I do believe that we have knowledge. I'm not. I have no. I can't tell you for certain. I can't tell you indefeasibly that it is true that we have knowledge, but
What's up,
justification is
ALC?
conducive towards it something being true.
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna definitely take a listen back to this, and maybe we can talk again after I do some more research. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming up.
Yeah, thank you,
Have a
man.
good night,
See
bro.
ya.
Bye.
You too. How do I leave?
I got you. Boom. All right, John, you ready?
I'm ready. How's my audio?
Good. Are you Australian?
I am Australian. I'm the one that I
Nice.
talked on Joel's channel a
Okay, you
few
just got a
times.
camera now.
Yeah.
You want to be on stream?
If you want, yeah, come on.
Yeah, let's do it. I usually
Your
don't,
choice.
but I've talked to you a couple guys. I've talked to you a couple times, so I can trust you.
I'm
I'm
not
sure you
going to
can
display
imagine.
explicit images or anything. Yeah. I'm just going to take my shirt off.
Hey, most Australians love taking their shirts off. So we have
We
a
are a
friend
wild bunch.
in our Bible study group who's Australian, and at the time we do the Bible study, it's he's working and he's a contractor, or as you guys call them, tradies, right?
Yeah, trading.
Yeah, he's a tradie, so he's always got his shirt off painting some house. So we bust him up about that. What do you want to talk about tonight?
So I was trying to write down your argument. I was taking extensive notes as you were talking. It was a bit disorientating because of the lag in one ear and also listening to you on the stream.
Yeah, collab
But
cam is weird.
I think I got the argument. So I kind of arranged it as you have like 4 conditionals. So you have, if knowledge is defeasible, then it's necessarily fallible. If it's fallible, it's possible with a credence less than 100. If it's possible less than 100, then, and this is the premise that I disagree with, that number less than 100 is arbitrary, and anything above that arbitrary level would count as knowledge.
Okay.
And then the 4th conditional, that the last consequent, then there's no distinction between belief and knowledge, and then negate that, and then you go this domino of 4 conditionals to be modus tollens. Is that like a fair summary of the argument?
I think so. And before we get into it, I just want to say, because now I remember one of our conversations, I have beef with Joel because of you. Because when I gave my lottery paradox, no, you're good. It's fun beef. When I gave my lottery paradox, Joel made a face on stream and made me look bad. You remember that?
I don't remember the faces. I was
Uh,
trying to search the paper as you were talking about it, but
No, before. But anyway, no, it's just funny because now I am 100% dedicated to writing a paper about the lottery paradox just to prove Joel wrong. So,
all right.
all right, let's talk about it
I
then.
can give you my email. You can send it to me.
Yeah, I will.
So, like I said, I get off at that third conditional, which was that if it's possible to have knowledge with less than 100%, then the number is arbitrary, and anything above that counts as knowledge. Was
Okay.
is that an accurate summary of the premise? Would
I
you think?
think so.
Would
Yeah.
you say it differently or close enough?
Yeah, but picking a credence threshold below 100% is arbitrary. There is no principled reason to choose, say, 51, 70, 90, or 99%. So are you saying that there is a principled reason?
Yeah, so I think we might just be using the word credence differently. So at least in kind of the epistemology that analytic philosophers today do, which I'm happy to complain about. I think it's got many problems. I'd agree with you on that. But I think the kind of standard use of the word credence is like strength of belief. It is not the same as like strength of justification. So
Okay.
if we take like Matt Dillahunty and Muhammad Hijab, they'll both have extremely high credences in atheism or Islam, respectively.
Yeah.
But we both like, disagree that they have justification that matches
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So
Do you
was your
suggest a better
argument
term
for what?
for instead of credence? Do you know of a better term?
So I like the word credence, but it refers to how confident your belief is. I think what you had in mind was justification, which is like,
Yeah, like
is the
level of
strength?
justification. That just sounds wordy, and I thought credence kind of made it sound better, but
Yeah,
maybe
usually
it's
people use credence when they're putting numbers or like probabilities on the strength of their beliefs. That's where the term credence usually comes in.
isn't that kind of the same thing as level of justification?
No, because it's possible that they can be mismatched. So, like the Matt Dillahunty, he's 150% certain that trans women are women and God doesn't exist. I think we both disagree that he's justified in those. So, justification is like, are your beliefs in line with like the norms of rationality? It's kind of analogous to normativity in the moral sense, but like with beliefs. So, are your beliefs good, proper, right to believe them? That's
Okay,
how
so you're saying
justification
you
is
can
usually
have
used.
confidence or credence without justification.
Yeah, I'd split those two. I think they're distinct. And you
Okay.
could also have justification for something without actually having a belief in it.
All right. So if we just, because I don't, under that definition, under that understanding, I probably don't want to use the word credence. So level of justification coherent?
Yeah, I think it's coherent.
Okay.
But
Let's do that.
then you need but then there's like a second question of what theory of justification you have, because there's disagreement amongst people. And actually what I said before isn't true. So not on every theory of justification would it be right to talk about it in degrees. Some of them would permit of degrees, but there are different like theories of when you have justification where it's like a binary on or off switch. So is there like a theory of justification you have, and we can talk about that, or
No,
do you
I
want me to say
don't.
more?
I haven't particularly studied that. So what I'm seeing here is like foundationalism, coherentism, infinitism, which is kind of what I was talking to the last guest about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not
want to.
quite sure.
Right. So someone like
They cohere that belief for each belief is justified. I mean, just picking one, it seems like coherentism, but like I said, I haven't really dived deep on this.
So foundationalism, coherentism, infinitism, they're kind of answers to what's called the regress problem, which is about like whether chains of inferences can go on forever. That's sort of separate to the level about the question about what the correct theory of justification is. So someone like Alvin Plantinga would say, you're justified in a belief just in case your like cognitive faculties are functioning properly the way God designed them.
Okay.
Or an evidentialist would say,
So
your belief is justified just in case your credence is in line with your evidence.
So do we need, because now that I'm thinking about this a little bit, as you brought it up, Do we need to agree on a term? Because if I'm correct in thinking this, as a presuppositionalist, as a Christian, I don't know, like the theory of justification that I would give, you wouldn't agree with. Do we like that's like kind of the contention? So like I think we're only justified. Well, no, because you don't have to have a justified, like you can have a justified belief that's not knowledge, right?
Yeah, if it wasn't
All right.
true.
Yeah. Wait, if it wasn't true? Or if you couldn't know that it was true?
So I think knowledge is more than just justified belief.
But you could have a justified belief that you're unsure if it's true or not, and it not be false, like not be necessarily false.
Yeah, you could. I think you can have knowledge even if you're not sure, and by sure I mean like 100% certain. So your credence, like your strength of how confident you are, could be high but less than 100, and it could still be knowledge. And I think you disagree with that.
Like,
is that right?
Well, like I'm thinking of like a historical. Yeah, I do disagree with that, but I'm thinking of like a historical claim, for example. That's kind of hard to really know if it's true or not based on the access to history that we have. But we could have a justified belief that we would both consider rational, but we wouldn't say is knowledge, but we wouldn't also be able to say it's false. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it would be knowledge if it's true.
Right.
That's my position. But if it's not true, it wouldn't be knowledge. But you could still be justified.
Yeah, maybe I definitely have to think about a theory of justification.
Yeah. So I take fallibilism that your argument was against to be a thesis about degree of belief, like confidence and knowledge. Which
right.
Is that how
you're
understanding it as well?
Fallibilism is like, I don't have to know for certain or be 100% justified in my belief. Like knowledge doesn't have to be defeasible or indefeasible.
So you said two things there. The first one was right. You don't have to be certain, but you do have to be justified. So the 100% justified and the 100% certain are kind of separate questions.
Well,
and my example would be, Matt Dillahunty seems to be 100% certain that womanhood is not defined in terms of femaleness, and me and you would disagree that he's justified in that.
Okay, so let's not use certain then. So indefeasible, not able to be lost, annulled, or overturned.
Yeah. And you said before knowledge is indefeasible, and I think I agree with that. It's not able to be overturned or annulled.
So then you wouldn't be a fallibilist.
I am, but what happens in those cases where it looks like it's being overturned is you just realize that you never actually knew it to begin with. It was never in fact knowledge if it wasn't true. So I don't think knowledge can be overturned. I think
so then how can you have
belief that you have knowledge? Well, if you satisfy all the kind of criteria to have knowledge.
Right, but you would never be able to know that anything is certainly true because there's always the possibility of it being overturned.
But that doesn't undermine knowledge unless you presuppose. I don't want to use the word presuppose. Unless you assume.
I love that word.
That's your favorite word. Could you repeat it? I lost where I was going.
Yeah. So if knowledge has to be indefeasible, then you can never know anything if it's always possible that what you believe that, like what you say you know, could be wrong. Isn't, and this is what I said to the last caller, fallibilism basically came out of the idea that we can't know anything. We can't know where we're not a brain in a vat or in a dream.
Oh, certain.
Right. So like, if we can't know that, then we can't know anything. And that's where fallibilism develops of like, we don't care about that question. We don't need to have this certainty.
Yeah. Do you want me to give an argument for fallibilism? And you can... Sometimes if someone just puts an argument on the table, it's easier to find where the disagreements are.
Yeah.
The basic two-step argument.
Okay.
I have lots of knowledge, and generally certainty is irrational. And then the conclusion would be it's possible to have knowledge without certainty.
And how would you like? What's the
And
justification?
I'll defend that argument. So if I give you a particular example, I don't know, you have a green background behind you. Do you believe that?
How do you know I have? um, yeah, I believe I have a green screen. I'm not in space.
Yeah, and would you say you know it? Do you have a green screen?
Under my worldview, no.
You don't know that you have a green screen behind you?
No, I have
Why
a very high probable belief.
Okay. And that's insufficient for knowledge? Why?
Yes. Because I could be wrong about that.
But what is
For
the
example,
possibility that you're wrong?
I don't think like in the Christian worldview the brain in the vat thing applies, right? But I do think, like, for example, I was thinking about this earlier, like I could be in this moment dreaming. God could put me in a dream right now to run my arguments against a fictitious John.
Yeah.
You know, for an evangelistic opportunity the next day.
Yeah.
Right. So like stuff like that, I think is plausible to say. So that is, and then were you going to ask me why the possibility of being wrong undermines my knowledge?
Yeah, I was caught off guard when you said no, you didn't know that it was a green screen. So could you give me an example of something you do know, or that you believe that you know?
Yeah, and you know, this might be
just a like trivial case.
I'm not trying to throw a wrench in anything. Like I'm not. This is just because I've thought about this a lot, and if Christianity is true, if presuppositionalism specifically as a methodology of apologetics is true, then the only things we know is via divine revelation.
Right.
Because if knowledge has to be indefeasible, then the only one who can defeat all possible defeaters, for lack of a better way of saying it, is God, because he knows all things.
I still think the argument that I'm about to make might work if you, even assuming that if you give me an example. So maybe I'll pick one for you.
So an example is that God exists.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason I know this is through, I would say, intuition.
You know that through intuition. All right. So let's say that
God makes us know through intuition, to be more specific.
Yeah. Could you give me like a more trivial case of something you know, or do you think you don't actually have that much knowledge?
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Like, how much knowledge do you think I have? I might think I have more knowledge than you believe that you have knowledge. Is that right?
I'm similar to like I guess skeptic in a sense. Like I would say that the only things we know are things that are general revelation, which is basically that God exists, and then special revelation through the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit makes us know that the Bible is true. So anything in the Bible, I would say I know through the testimony of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. What's an example of something in the Bible? Let's say Jesus turned the 12 fish into a million fish, whatever the number was. Feeds the 10,000 people. Yeah. So let's say inside this Assassin's Creed
hold on, I gotta do this puzzle. All set.
Let's say, like, written down in front of me, I have like a proof that will convince you either way that it did or it didn't happen. I have like evidence that will for sure convince you. Would you take a bet? If the feeding the 5,000 story did happen, I'm going to give you 10 cents. If it didn't happen, I'm going to do 1,000 holocausts. I'm going to take 500,000 puppies, burn them alive. I'm going to do the most terrible thing ever. If it's false that they're feeding the five, I'm offering you this bet. Would you take the bet? So if you're 100% certain, you should say, well, I've studied decision theory. I know how to do the maths. Probability zero.
That's not how I know. Or is that?
I'm not saying that thing.
Okay,
Let me just shut my. I'm saying if you really were 100% certain and you do the expected value calculation, that's a free 10 cents. You could just keep taking that bet over and over. You could press the button like 100 trillion times and just accumulate billions of dollars. Would you take that bet?
Yeah, every time.
Every time. What about for like just because it's in the Bible?
Yes, because especially because of the argument that I give for tag.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should have talked about that argument instead. Because at least for me, if you ask me, would I take that bet? And instead of the feeding the 5,000, it was like, do I know
Something
that I
trivial.
just drank coffee
Yeah.
instead of tea? I'm not taking that bet. But would you
Right.
take that bet for things trivial, or you just wouldn't say that you
No.
know the trivial things?
Yeah. I would say that I have an extremely high probability that those trivial things are true. And this is something I have to do more research on too, because I remember hearing Cy Ten Bruggencate tell me, he was like, well, God is going to hold us morally responsible for theft, for example. And in order to not steal something, I have to know what is and what is not mine. It's like, all right, so I guess, there's some.
Well, then,
Some
if you say
development
that,
there.
then I could apply the question there.
Right.
So if you hold up your phone, would you take the bet that that's actually your phone, or it's
Right.
not
So,
your brother's
so
and you're just
if
confused about it?
if I couldn't have 100% certainty through divine revelation, then no, I wouldn't. And I think that's exactly why most epistemologists are fallibilists, because they're not Christian. At least if they are Christian, they don't hold to presuppositional apologetics as a methodology or an epistemology. Like, even in the paper that I mentioned, did you hear it, Lawrence Bonjour, The Myth of Knowledge? Even in that paper,
I skimmed it
oh, he
on
did?
your recommendation a few weeks
Cool.
ago. Yeah.
And so I don't think he's a Christian. I don't know what he is. Maybe he's a theist. I don't know. But even he, at the end of the article, is like, this doesn't prove infallibilism. And the way that most infallibilists try to prove infallibilism is like through the cogito, or through some like logical analytic thing. Like, I don't even know. But like, it's very hard to prove infallibilism. I think tag does, in a sense. Like, I'm not sure. I'd have to flesh that out more. But I think that being an infallibilist as a Christian is easy, but being an infallibilist not as a Christian is very hard.
Right. So I guess we could go two ways. We could go. Actually, let's stick on: is it easy to be an infallibilist and a Christian?
Okay.
So you hold up your phone next to you and you believe that it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of Christians who would also hold up their phone and believe that it's theirs.
Right.
But it's possible that they could be wrong, correct?
Yeah.
So like, what makes you the
Very-
recipient of divine revelation but not them?
Well,
If they had a false belief.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that it's my phone. I would have a belief about it that I would say is very, very likely that it is my phone. Like a
Right,
point
maybe I misheard.
0.001% chance that it's not my phone.
And therefore it's not knowledge.
Right.
So the things you claim to know are just ones from
Divine
like
revelation.
divine revelation, but
Right.
not general revelation.
Would
you say just special
general
revelation?
and special. But I think the only general revelation is that God exists.
The only general revelation is that God exists.
So, like, I would say you know that God exists, and I'm not calling you a liar or anything like that. But I would say you know that God exists, but you don't know that Jesus is Lord because the Holy Spirit hasn't granted that to you. And this is where a lot of Christians say, like, you go to hell for your rejection of Jesus, and I get what they're trying to say, but the Bible doesn't say you go to hell for the rejection of Jesus. You go to hell for your sin against the God that you know exists.
Right. So I didn't actually say that I'm not a Christian in this conversation, but I did before. But I think everything I said is perfectly consistent with Christianity. And there's lots of Christian epistemologists who I've learned a lot from, and I agree with them on lots of things.
Yeah,
Maybe that's just speaks to the difference between like precept and other.
Yeah, there's generally three camps: classical, evidential, and presuppositional.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think That's a question, and maybe I just haven't read enough Christian epistemologists. Maybe you could recommend some to me. But Christian apologists generally don't get this deep into epistemology, so I haven't heard the conversations around them.
Right. So I was kind of interested in apologetics as like a teenager, 17, 18, and then just stopped and just read philosophy. And now the last few weeks I'm coming back to it. I feel like there's just a language barrier about like the way that different words get used. I don't think the apologists are just confused about what things mean. I just think that the terminology is different.
Yeah.
So are we just at an impasse?
Like,
because I gave you the argument for fallibilism, but it seems like you just rejected the premises. So where is this like the Greg Bahnsen, the two towers? We can't throw arrows at each
well,
other.
Bahnsen would reject that, yeah. But there is a presuppositional apologist alive at the time of Van Til, which was before Bahnsen, by the name of Greg Clark. So it's called like Clarkian presuppositionalism. And he believed that presuppositionalism rested upon an axiom that God existed, and that every other worldview rested upon axioms. So you kind of were stuck in those two ivory towers, which is an interesting thought. Those are kind of like the two branches. But presuppositionalism developed out of Kantian philosophy, right? Transcendental arguments and stuff like that. But it's interesting because, and tell me if I'm wrong, you seem to know more about mainstream philosophy than I do. Kant's kind of rejected most of the time, right? With his transcendental arguments.
I feel like there's not too much discussion of the transcendental arguments. There are a lot of like vaguely Kantian beliefs in ethics, but I don't think that Kantian transcendental arguments are too popular today.
Now, what about, have you ever heard the term benign circularity?
I think I've heard it from Bahnsen. Just let me shut my window.
You good? An interesting thing that's happening is presuppositionalists would bring up the difference between vicious and virtuous circles. And to be honest, I have a hard time understanding it. But it seemed like every time they were brought up, atheists would reject it as just not a thing. Like that was just kind of a trick that presuppositionalists were using. But now, I think there's talk about it in mainstream philosophy. There's philosophy papers being written about it. It's known as like virtuous circularity, or vicious circularity, benign circularity, and a spiral and epistemological circularity, or epistemic circularity. Have you heard these terms at all?
Yeah, there's this unfortunate term of epistemic circularity versus like formal or propositional circularity.
I have two friends. I haven't talked to Precept Mars that much, but I would like to have him up, as well as Spicy. Spicy I've talked to a lot. We get along quite well. Spicy's an atheist. Would you mind if I brought them up? I feel like we're having a good conversation. It might just add to it.
Yeah, go for it. Or if you want me to leave, I've already taken enough time. But
I'm gonna get off in 10 minutes anyway.
Okay.
But I would like to. This would be an interesting group of people to have up at once.
Sure.
But I want you to finish
whoever
your
on.
thought.
That's all right.
Okay.
No, not super important what I was saying. I was just going to complain about analytic philosophy, but
okay, go ahead.
I do that all day anyway. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I'm a recovering philosophy major. I just wrapped up a degree in mathematics and philosophy, but I kind of don't really like a lot of philosophy. I think it's very, very
Depends
strange.
on the day for me. Some days I'm like, this is awesome, and other days I'm like, I don't care. I'm going home. I'm going to play video games and go take a nap.
Yeah.
What's up, Spicy? What's up,
Why do you meet all these cool people? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think
they're not in the Streamlabs, are they?
Oh no, you can't hear them?
No, I can't hear them now.
Let me see. Oh no.
Oh wait, can you hear me, Alex?
I can hear you.
We need Unity in the streaming apps so we can hear us.
I'll be able to hear them on a delay if I watch the YouTube, but I won't be able to hear them as they're talking.
Yeah, that stinks. You can hear John, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
All right, let's see.
I just wanted to make a real quick point though about the vicious and virtuous circularity.
Go ahead.
So the idea is like a vicious it's viciously circular because it's inconsistent on its own assumptions. But Van Til would say like um we take a leap of faith in Christ, but it's not a leap in the dark because it's consistent within the system. So having faith, starting with faith in Christ is consistent within the Christian system. But like for an empiricist or something, like I don't know, having faith in empiricism isn't going to be consistent with an empiricist system.
Yeah, I guess I have trouble with that. I talked to an apologist, Eli Ayala. He's Revealed Apologetics on YouTube.
He's good.
Yeah, and he was trying to explain it to me, and I think I got it, but it was tough to like. I don't say I understand something until I can teach it to somebody, and I wouldn't be able to necessarily teach it to somebody, and I wouldn't be able to necessarily teach somebody, and I wouldn't be able to. All right, so John, if you pull up, you don't even have to have TikTok. If you just go to tiktok.com/@Wi-Fi Gospel, especially on a computer, the latency is near 0, so you could hear everybody.
Yeah.
So I'll come back to you, P Marks. I want you to say it again once John can hear us. But Spicy, would you come up for you? Just want to say hi? Or you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello.
That's cool. Just stay up here and hang out. Absolutely.
I was gonna offer if you wanted to ask any questions because I know we're gonna do our debate.
Yeah, I haven't prepared for
and I've been
debate
in the comments, obviously. Yeah, I've just started today.
Yeah, I don't have anything going on tomorrow night and Thursday night, and then I'm talking to Monkey Boy and some of his friends on Friday. That'll be good preparation, and then then I'll be able to work on it some more. But 20 minutes is a long opening statement.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a lecture. Sorry for that.
That's all right.
I'll try not. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched that Monkey Boy debate with you and Sai, and he just ignored your guys' argument. That's all he did the entire time. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, it was definitely a frustrating debate. Everybody felt the frustrations for sure. I was just thrilled to be in a debate with Sai. It was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. You got that on your resume now.
Yeah, right. And I started to build a relationship with Sai. I might meet him in person soon, so that'll be cool.
Precept Mars, have you ever had a conversation with Floyd FP or Ozymandias Ramses II? Do you know them?
I know Floyd FP. I might have talked to the other guy. I don't really remember that. I'm definitely familiar with Floyd though.
I love those guys.
Yeah, Floyd has done a little bit of research, more than most, on presupposition, and he'll bring up like Barry Stroud, I think, and stuff like that critique. So you got some of these guys keep you on your toes.
John, can you hear us now?
It's a bit better, but there's still like 5-10 seconds lag.
Really? Oh man. Maybe it's just because I have really fast internet. When I pulled it up on my end, it was like near 0. But could you say what you said again about the circularity so John could hear you? I'd like to hear John's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just sort of looking and reading about that recently, where like I think the idea like the vicious circularity is when your starting assumptions are like inconsistent. Where like Christianity would be a virtuous circularity because starting with faith in Christ is consistent within like the system.
So Jonathan, thanks for stopping by the stream. Appreciate you, brother. Sorry, go ahead.
Like if we start with like, I don't know, faith and empiricism, that wouldn't be like consistent with empiricism. I guess if that makes sense. I don't know.
Okay.
Because you have to have like a starting point, right? Where you kind of like, this is my starting point. This is my authority.
I get what you're saying.
Does it have to be one starting point? Like a singular thing?
Well, I think to have unity in a worldview, yeah, we have to get like, because of the reciprocal relationship between like existence, truth, and ethics, that we have to it seems like unless there's a single source of all three of those things, like how would you get unity? and explain all those things.
Yeah, there's something they're sharing a property that would make it analogous for all of them, right?
Right.
Yeah,
We're like I think you have to have a holistic, because like if something is true, then something exists, or if like something exists, then it's true that something exists. So there's this like reciprocal relationship. So I think with like God's like what, the source of existence. He's the source of truth, and he's the source of ethics. And so we get unity in our worldview, and it's like it's hard for me to see how you would accomplish that without God, or then have any access to knowing that without revelation.
So, I mean, when I hear precept now, really all I hear is, well, at its root, I hear an appeal to an ontological story that, like, if this ontological story is true, then I can know things, or then there's transcendentals, or you know what I mean. I mean, to me, it seems the exact opposite, that anyone can play that same kind of game, where you posit like a hypothetical framework in which story is true, knowledge exists, or something like that.
I don't. Well, it's not really like
anyone can say,
not
if
really
the story of the world, or if my metaphysic is true, you know, something like that.
Yeah, but we're not really like. That's kind of what a lot of philosophers will do. Is like, well, here's my metaphysical assumptions, and then let me build my like program on top of that. But we're kind of saying like crap, I lost my train of thought. We're kind of saying like there's like this human limitations, like science can't make real like justified metaphysical claims.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Philosophers can't make justified metaphysical claims, so we kind of have to like submit to this authority outside of humanity,
Yeah,
like God's revelation, or else we won't be able to make sense of like rational or empirical evidence.
yeah, because I would say that I'm an atheist that appeals to faith, and it seems to be a very unpopular opinion, but I think it's the most honest. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think that would be more honest, yeah, because yeah, you're not there's going to be a lot of things that atheists are going to take for granted that we like bring up in precept, where you have to believe, but you can't have justification.
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't taught, like, this is my favorite example. You were never taught to trust your senses or your memory or anything else, right? You just did. You were born, you had faith. No one had to teach you any of it. It just came with you. So it's like an animal faith almost.
The way Darth puts it is like God designed the way you think in the world in a way where you can't like rationally deny your senses or deny your reasoning without being like insane, basically.
What do you think about other, like, what do you think about alternatives that would say, like, the world it follows physical laws, natural stuff, and through evolutionary processes, it's like truth tracking, like your beliefs are truth tracking and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, it just wouldn't follow because evolution accounts for survivability. So like, there's no reason to think that like beings who reasoned incorrectly about the world for some reason survived better, and beings who reasoned accurately survived worse.
Wait, you don't think there's a correlation? I guess that's my.
No, I think that's like a leap in logic.
Oh, that's surprising. I actually haven't heard that. Obviously I've heard Plantinga's argument, but I guess having no correlation with truth is kind of difficult.
I want to get, sorry to interrupt your conversation. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I want to get John's thoughts on the circularity thing, if you remember what Pimar said, John.
Yep. So I just muted TikTok. So if they just so I'm not
Okay.
hearing myself. What did he say about circularity again? Could you remind me? So 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. So he basically said
Uh,
that every epistemic or every worldview is circular at its foundation, but so we must take a leap of faith at some point. But faith is inconsistent with empiricism. Is that right, P. Mars?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
something like that.
with Christianity.
I'm not sure that worldviews are the kind of right things to be debating whether they're circular or not. I
Okay.
think like people make circular arguments,
What
but
about
I don't think that you can apply circularity to worldview.
what about if we just said like epistemology, for example?
Yeah, so I think there's live debate. I'm not 100% certain about this, but I
Okay.
still know it. I'm in the camp that I think all circular reasoning is bad. But there's like nuances of people trying to distinguish between different forms of circular reasoning.
Because so if
And
you
I have
take
no idea if they're screaming or if they're disagreeing or agreeing.
no, they're not talking at all yet right now. But if they want to talk to you, they'll let me know and you can put your TikTok stream back on. But what about like because most people would agree that your sense data, like knowing that your senses are reliable, puts you in a tough position if you think that all circular reasoning is bad.
Why does inferences on the basis of sense data have to be circular?
Because if I ask you how you know that your senses are reliable, you must assume them in order to prove them in any justification that you would give, unless you could give a different one.
So I don't think you have to assume them in order to prove them. I think you can be like a foundationalist.
Well, I'm gonna
Then
put atheist
you'd have
against
to-
atheist because Spicy
then you'd have to-
disagrees.
You'd have to defend neutral
Oh,
facts.
he can't hear you yet. Put your TikTok on, and then P Mars and Spicy can talk.
Oh, I actually disagree. I think when it comes to, that's why I was talking about faith, right? Like when it comes to the valid nature of logic or something like that, you know, that's a belief that cannot be defended rationally. It's correct to say if you were to try to do so, it would be circular reasoning. Whether you want to rebrand that as vicious or virtuous or whatever you want to label it as, it's definitely circular reasoning. But that doesn't mean we're committed to actually trying to defend it rationally. You can just say, okay, I've reached my epistemic limits. I'm no longer going to try and provide justifications for this thing because this is actually a faith position at this point. Like it's this is where the chain of justification ends. You can see it stop. That's another available position.
And then P Mars, he didn't hear you, so if you want to say what you're going to say about that now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. So, like, I think it'd be hard to defend foundationalism because I think there's like really strong critiques. Like, I think was it Wilfred Sellers' "The Myth of the Given" would be pretty hard to tackle. And I think like it might have been Aristotle. He said when we're talking about justifications, we're either gonna have to engage in some type of circularity or like an infinite regress. And I think an infinite regress of justification is not like it's really just an obfuscation that you're not really justifying anything. I don't think that's very satisfactory. So I think that this like circularity is much more interesting. And like this idea that there's like epistemic circularity, transcendental circularity, worldview circularity. Like I think when we're talking about God, since God's like the ultimate foundation of truth, it would make sense that like there's nothing else outside of God. He's self-contained, so nothing else outside of him is going to justify him. So I think circularity, when we're talking about like an ultimate fact, it'd be like what Van Til says, like spiral reasoning, as opposed to like circular reasoning. So,
yeah, John, if you'd like to reply to that, and I am gonna cut us off in 6 minutes because I got work. I got to wake up at 5. But I appreciate you all coming up here. I love talking to you guys.
Did you say that Aristotle was either So did I hear you right? And you said that Aristotle said either there's circularity or infinite regress.
I
And could
believe
Wi-Fi Gospel do a thumbs up?
I think
That's what he
I
said.
believe that's correct.
I
I could
can't
go
hear
check.
because it's
I could
paused.
go
So
check. I believe that's correct.
Aristotle's like a famous classical
Yeah,
foundationalist.
he said he thinks that's correct, but he could go double check.
Yeah. So Aristotle said it's either foundationalism, circularity, or regress, and he ruled out circularity and regress, and made an argument for foundationalism. But that's just like a kind of historical tidbit. Who cares what Aristotle says? And then the other thing, I'm not sure about the name, Spicy. I'm sure me and Spicy could debate that all day, and we're not going to resolve it in the next 5 minutes.
Spicy's an anti-atheist atheist. I'm just kidding. Sorry, go ahead.
I've never heard that
Yeah.
before.
Just as like a basic reply. So there's kind of a difference between forming a belief about the world based on sense perception and the belief that your senses are reliable. So I think if you kind of make sure to distinguish those two things, the justification for like my belief that there's a cup doesn't necessarily assume like an answer to why do I believe that my senses are reliable. So there's like a whole literature like dissecting this, and I'm not going to say anything that sounds clever in the next 2 minutes, so I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, I don't know. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, Spicy's gonna say something if you want to turn on the TikTok. Go ahead, Spicy.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just using the wrong words, but I'm trying to say something like, when it comes to justification, you don't always have to. It's not like it's not internalism, right? You don't have to consciously think about or have some reason in your head. It's that this condition for justification is real, but it could be like not directly accessible to the believer. Like my favorite example is like dogs and cats. They don't have reasons to trust their eyesight. They don't even have beliefs, positive beliefs like, oh, I trust in my eyesight or whatever. They just do. It's instinct. And whether they're justified or not is external to what their beliefs are about it. So that's what I was trying to say. I don't know if there's a better way to phrase it, though.
So I went back to the paper and I kind of misread it. So it talked about. It says that Aristotle pointed out that our options regarding first truths or foundations are limited, and then asked to justify why we ultimately believe something. We will, let's see here. When asked to justify whether we ultimately believe something, then our answer will make a reference to some other belief. Or wait, I'm getting confused now. Oh yeah, in the course of justifying our beliefs, we will refer back to some belief that we have already been asked to justify, and we will be involved in circular reasoning, or it'll be like an infinite regress. So I guess Aristotle didn't say that. It was like talking about Aristotle, and then it started talking. So I got kind of confused. That's my bad.
All good. John, yeah, if you want to reply to what Spicy said. Sorry, I'm looking at chats over here, so I kind of missed a little bit, but I've heard Spicy talk about the cat and dog thing, so I think I understand what he said.
So maybe I'll reply in reverse order. So what, I can only say the word precept. I don't know what the rest of the name is. But he was kind of describing what's called the regress problem. So you say that I have a belief, and then that belief is formed on the basis of an inference. And for some beliefs, it goes like a long way. I can give you like long chains of reasonings. Sometimes it's kind of short. And what Aristotle pointed out that there's kind of three options. You can say that there's like an infinite chain of inferences. You can say there's a circle of inferences, or you can have a belief that's justified. So you're rational in believing it, but it's not formed on the basis of an inference. And that's the thesis of foundationalism. So a foundational belief would be those beliefs that you believe you're rational, you're justified, you're not being irrational, but it's not formed by an inference. Just a little explanation of what the kind of context of those comments were. And then to Spicy, we might just have to debate whether or not dogs and cats have beliefs, but I'll leave that for another day.
Ooh, that's fun.
I'll say my opinion, because why not? I think that in observations, there is propositional content behind them, but you don't have to be like explicitly aware of that. So I think like a baby or a dog can see their mother and just believe that it's their mother, but without going through like an elaborate chain of reasoning. And I'm an internalist, but I'll shut up because, yeah, it's hard to debate when I can't hear what you're saying at the same time.
Yeah,
so.
I'll have to figure out
And we're short
a
of
good
time,
way
yeah.
I'll have to figure out a good way to get the audio to come through so I can have guests on both talk to each other. I didn't even think about that because I never do it. But I am going to kick you off, John, before P. Mars and Spicy say their last words so that I can get to bed soon. But I really appreciate you coming up.
All right. Thanks for talking to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
I followed you on Instagram. I might send you a message.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Instagram's easy for me to talk.
Thanks for the talk.
And thank you to Spicy and Precept. Appreciate it. Bye.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm happy to have listened to you. Cool.
Get that.
I'm also
get that
happy
Aussie
to-
out of here.
Yeah. I'm also happy to be able to talk to Precept Mars without Darth yelling at me.
Uh-oh. Shots fired. Darth, you just summoned Darth. You know that, right? He's
Oh,
gonna
God.
pop up right here, and I'm gonna let him up if he comes, just because he said
I'm hitting
that.
the bat. I'm hitting the bat
He's
single.
He's so mean. Well,
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I understand a lot of people. He doesn't. Sometimes people don't get along with him, but he I don't know. If you kind of understand where he's coming from, he's not that bad of a guy. And but thanks for having me up, Wi-Fi. You know, I guess we're both fellow Precept Christians, so it's.
Yeah, let's talk
support-
offline sometime. Get to know each other. A little
Yeah,
bit.
I want to support you and stuff. So because we're on the same page here. So
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about a few things, and then you've seen some of my
Okay.
streams. I've seen some of yours. I would love to talk.
what's
more.
a good way to get a contact?
You have Discord?
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, it's at Wi-Fi Gospel on Discord.
at Wi-Fi Gospel. Okay,
Yep,
over
I
here.
got
I'm gonna-
all the ats. I made sure to.
Do I have to put an ad in there at Wi-Fi?
No, I think if you just search Wi-Fi Gospel, like when you Discord's a little weird like that, but I don't think you
Oh,
need that.
you got your name on all the medias. Yeah, that's good.
Yup, I did it, and I got the domain. And nobody has successfully made fun of my name yet. That's not
Okay,
an invitation to try.
It'll happen.
Yeah,
I
well.
don't think there's a name that's can escape it. So I sent you a friend request. I think my name's like Trump is King, maybe. I'm not sure. I named it. I kind of name it to. I kind of like to rage bait the non-believers.
As long as we're on TikTok, Trump is king, and everybody has to say that in order to use TikTok.
right? You save TikTok, so yeah. All right, man. Nice
All
talking
right.
to you.
Nice
Talk
talking to
later.
you. See ya. Ooh, Spicy. What's up?
what's up, dude? Well, we should finish that convo on the rest of your debate, because I'd like to critique those atheists already.
Do you like the moniker I gave you of the anti-atheist atheist?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, you should put that in your bio now. No, just kidding. But it would be fun just to drag you up here every time an atheist.
You know-
like an atheist you disagree with.
Funny story. So my girlfriend's Catholic, and for the longest time, I had non-stamp collector on my profile or in my bio, and it just put a non-stamp collector there. And at some point, she went and bought me stamps, so I couldn't say that anymore.
Oh,
And
nice.
so now I have like a dashed line through it.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
I'm no longer a non-stamp collector.
Nerd.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I kind of forget.
You know what that
everything
means,
I
right?
said.
a
What's that?
non-stamp collector. It's people who say they're non-stamp collectors. They're basically saying they're atheists.
Oop, I just muted you. I don't know why I did that.
Hello.
Oh, so wait, I didn't know there was a collection there, a connection.
Hmm.
What is it?
Oh, you didn't know that non-stamp collector? It's a way of saying that you're an atheist.
How?
Because, well, the argument is more or less.
I can hear the snarkiness in your voice. Just say it.
It's like if atheism is a religion, then not collecting stamps is a hobby, or not playing baseball is a hobby.
Okay,
Right.
but you don't even believe that anymore.
I know, it's hilarious. That's why I have it.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good lore. Good lore.
Yeah, so I used to be that form of atheist as well.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Okay. Until Sci-10 Bruggencate destroyed your worldview.
Actually, though, my friend is like the most literate presuppositionalist ever.
Okay.
He
You
sent
still haven't hooked us up yet.
papers.
You don't.
Yeah.
If you combine us, we'll just be unstoppable, and you
I
won't have
don't
anywhere
want
to
that.
go.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I'm glad I joined.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, yeah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to like ask me questions too, so I'm not like secretly, preparing
No, of course.
in an unfair way. So
At this point in our online relationship, I know I can hit you up at any time with questions. I think we're both doing this in good faith.
cool.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
all right.
Yeah,
I know
I'll
you
talk
gotta
to
get
you
to
soon, man.
Good night, dude.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys for popping out for the stream. Appreciate y'all. Shout out to ALC. Always here. Always talking in the chat. Appreciate you. I also see you. I watch all the streams. I see you everywhere. You're like me. We're a little bit addicted to YouTube. Maybe we can start a YouTube watching anonymous. Thank you guys. Have a good night.